Good evening. My name is Natalie Mead. I'm the Associate Curator at the Hunter Museum. Welcome to the Hunter's first Artist Talk of the new year, and thank you so much for joining us. Whether this is your first time attending a virtual Artist Talk or if you attended programs with us in the past, welcome. If you're just tuning in, please take a moment to let us know where you're from. Say a quick hello in the chat box on the side of your screen. And if you have any questions during the program this evening, please type them in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. As a reminder, not only can you rewatch tonight's program, which is being recorded, but you can catch all past Artist Talks and other programs on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for Hunter Museum. This evening, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing you to the talented textile artist, Ashley V. Blalock. Ashley has a master's degree in sculpture from the San Francisco Art Institute and 2 bachelor's degrees, one in art history from the University of California, Riverside, and one in painting from the San Diego State University. Her works have been exhibited in museums and galleries across the country, including the Nevada Museum of Art, Oceanside Museum of Art in California, the Mingay International Museum in San Diego, the Whatcom Museum in Washington, and most recently, the Franconia Sculpture Park in Minnesota, to name a few. I first heard about Ashley's large crocheted works a decade ago when she was featured on the popular website My Modern Met, who described her works as gigantic crocheted doilies that consumed the gallery walls. And with that, I too was consumed. Ashley's works are remarkable for many reasons, not the least of which are their vibrant color, the sheer scale, and unique use of the traditional technique, crochet. We are honored to have a new installation by Ashley at the Hunter Museum, which opened today and will be up through January 2022. This stunning sculpture of brilliant red overlapping crocheted doilies overtakes the walls of the mansion stairwell and welcomes you to the early American art galleries. It literally bridges the modern and contemporary parts of the museum with the historic and connects the mansion's original function as a home with its current role as a museum. But instead of me going on about it, let's take a virtual tour of this new installation at the Hunter so you can see for yourself. We are so thrilled to have Ashley Blalock here tonight to tell us more about her process and this new installation at the Hunter. Ashley, welcome. Please tell us how and why did installations like Bridging the Hunter start for you?
I want to thank you guys for having me here. It's an honor to do this. I'm so glad to have this up and for everybody, to be able to share it with everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and show kind of my work and talk about how I got to this. So let me. Okay, so when I started out a long time ago, and then I don't want to say when, but a long time ago, I started out as a painter when I first was in school as an undergrad, because that's what, isn't that what artists do? They paint, right? So I got all the way through undergrad as a painter, graduated painting and printmaking. And after that time, I tried to continue on, but it just wasn't speaking to me. I had moved away from home. I'd gone into studying art history. I was in graduate school for that. And I started working on a different body of work using crochet, which was something that I always had done. My grandmother had taught me, my aunt, was actually my great aunt, had also worked with me on. And it was something I just enjoyed doing. It was a part of me, whereas painting was something I had to adopt that wasn't really a part of me. It wasn't part of my daily life. So my early works, a lot of self-portraits, these are done with filet crochet and thread. And I projected images through them, which probably relates back that I originally was also a photography major at one point. Although I'm not very good at it. But anyway, that's what these did. The piece of crochet acts like a negative and then the light goes through it. So I did a series of these for a few years. It was the kind of first step away from doing painting, which was pretty scary because painting was very, it's got a long history and a lot of people do it. There's a lot of resources. So to go into this was very kind of a tentative step. So I did these for a while. And then in 2009, I entered into grad school at, I'd finished art history. I was teaching art history. And then I went in to do my MFA at San Francisco Art Institute. So this was the first time that I did the red doilies. I had done a lot of these images before that. And this was getting into, sometimes it gets a little hazy why it was the doilies, but it was that other part of crochet, that thread, and wanting to really make it more aggressive because they're usually really little white dainty things that we put on furniture to protect furniture. It's an older time signature, crochet, like this kind of crochet, thread crochet, we're only going back into later 1800s, whereas something like knitting goes way back, or null binding or whatever. So the first time that I did this, it was a real direct reference, and it was flat on the ground, like a doily would be flat on a surface. And this was a real fun kind of installation to do because of the Diego Rivera mural in the background. And I have a family history that ties us to Diego Rivera. One of my great-grandfather's brother sent him to Europe to study down in Mexico. So it was kind of fun to do that. And what was fun about this one, I started kind of playing with the space. I put them there, but everybody would come in, they'd look at the mural and not look at mine. And I was like, well, this is no good. So what I did is I was quickly making these every day and throwing down another one every day. And they were getting closer and closer to the mural and forcing people, they didn't want to step back on them. So it was interacting kind of in a way, moving the viewer around as well. So that was the first time they were out. So 2011, it was, already, I was almost done with grad school then. And then I ended up putting them on the walls. I kind of tentatively played with that and said, well, could I do this? Could I make them a little more aggressive? Because they were too passive, and move to that. Now, the red, a lot of people ask why the red. I like colors and color meaning. Red's been a favorite color of mine for a long time, not quite so much now, it changes, but it always used to be. And I like the idea of red being this color of passion, but also of anger. And, you know, you have this kind of two sides to that. And whereas the doilies are part of, well, they're part of the house, part of the domestic. And what is part of that domestic is the passion, the anger, the, you know, all the struggles and within the family, within the home. And a lot of this is also about, it's usually I call the red ones kind of keeping up appearances. I like a lot of television. So you'll hear these pop culture references. And that was a British show that was all about this, this woman, and she always was concerned about how others thought of her. And so if you were to lay out things like doilies and have a proper decorated home, you were in the process of keeping up appearances, no matter what was really going on in your home, which could be the anger, the love, passion. So that's kind of what kind of encapsulates what's behind it. So that was the first time up on the walls. That was for my one of my last thesis shows or reviews. And then there was my thesis show, which was a real big step for me because it was done at a hotel in San Francisco, at the Phoenix Hotel. And they said, we're going to give you rooms. And I was in this mindset, I need a white cube, but you don't, and it's best not. So it was kind of an interesting show because it's a mid-century modern hotel. And I had just in 2009 moved into a mid-century modern house, which I had never liked mid-century modern. But this room has elements of my home there, like in the style, the huge plate glass windows, the jalousie windows or the louver windows, the layout in the beam ceiling. And so it was like taking this work from my space at home to this hotel, which is a temporary home, a place that we inhabit for short amounts of time. We tried to make them home. And it was a real experiment. It was a lot of fun though with the windows, and I had to sew it to the carpet and really improvise. Even the funky fan in there, you know, that it's all part of that. So this was the first time really having it more dynamic. And each time I do it, it's experimenting and new spaces and trying to solve problems. How do I put it in there? How do I get it to stay put? How do I not trip people or clothesline people? Done all that. And, you know, how to make it accessible, but at the same time, kind of pushing out the viewer too. And we'll see that as I go along. After I graduated, then I was invited to the Nevada Museum of Art in the Small Works Gallery to do an installation. And it was a crazy triangular space, which was really neat. So what I did is, it was odd and it had these dark corners. So I cut off the corners, and you will see a lot of the same doilies in here. And what I do is I reuse them. Some of the ones that I have go back now almost 10 years. And they're starting to get old and messed up. And that's kind of part of the tradition of this kind of crochet, is that you reuse, you reuse, you reuse, you repurpose. And you only give up on it when it's finally just fallen apart. So for this, I'm going to, some of these are looking kind of mangy now, and I'm pulling those out as I'm doing more shows and evaluating them. And then they're going to get dyed, probably black, and they're going to go into another piece, and I'll probably take out the middles as well. I want to make them almost horizontal, and you can kind of pop up through them and interact with them. But I want them like a ceiling that closes in on you. So that was this one. And then one of the few shots of me working on it. I don't take pictures myself that often. So, you know, and like this pinwheel one that's in there, I don't know if this shows, but that one of those is in here in the Hunter. I like those. I like it. It's a repeating pattern. And I developed a pattern of that where I could repeat it into infinity. And I kind of enjoy the thought of that. So let me show another. And then sometimes they're not all room, you know, sometimes we don't have the room for a whole room of these. So there are smaller, more discrete installations, and these are all site-specific installations. I don't usually plan out things until I get there. I like to feel the space because photos they don't describe what you really feel when you're there. And I encourage anyone to come and see this, the installation, to walk through it. It gives a much different feeling because they are here at the Hunter, they're over you, they're kind of coming at you. And that sort of thing gets lost in photos, which is unfortunate, but it's, you know, one of the problems of photography. So that, and by the way, that's my husband. You'll see him show up in a lot of these photos. He's my scale person, the 6-foot scale person. He's getting really good at knowing how to pose too. There he is again. This one's at the Whatcom in Bellingham. That was a lot of fun to do. Terrifying, frightening to do because I was told it'd be 25-foot ceilings. And I'm just little old me. And I make all of these. I do not have an assistant. I've considered it. But right now, this is about me. It's about my life, my lifespan, and the limits of what I can do. And to take on help would change that. So until I can rationalize doing that, I do it all myself. Constantly work. But I do reuse these, so that helps. But this one needed a 25-footer. That one took, in the center, it took about 6 to 8 hours a day. It took about a month. So that was just a huge, huge one. The next one there is like 20 feet, and I think there's another 20-footer, maybe a 15-footer. So yeah, it was really overwhelming. I do not go up on the lifts. I didn't do the lift on this one because I'm afraid of heights, which I spent a lot of time on ladders, but I'm still kind of afraid of heights. But somebody else went up, and that's actually really good because I have to be able to see the whole picture. And when you're up, you can't see the whole picture. And we discussed where to tie them. So they're tied with monofilament. They are screwed to the wall. These ones actually got drilled into the floor, which was pretty neat because I don't always get to do that. And then this kind of shows the lift, the scissors lift. And this is kind of a different talk than some of the others I do, where I'm actually showing a lot of process images. I'm not showing myself crocheting because that's kind of boring, but I've got one image of that. And of course, crochet, you're using one continuous piece of string, you have a hook, and it's just, you're constantly making stitches through looping. Very different from knitting. It's nice. If you drop it, it just doesn't unravel like knitting. And then this one created the tunnel, and then it framed the window up above. So it changed that space. And that's something I'm interested in, is altering the architecture of the space, that visual effect. So this was one I was really happy with, been very happy with for a long time. And there's another shot looking up. And again, in person is very different than the after shots of this. And I usually photograph my own works because I have a feeling of where I know I want to see that angle, to try to convey through the photograph how you feel when you're there. And this is one where it just went way up at you, above you. Okay, and then I got asked to go to the Heritage Museum and Gardens in Massachusetts. Oddly enough, I've been in Massachusetts, I think 3 times now. And they want to know, would you be interested in doing something outside in the garden? And I said, sure, you know, try something different, because your house is you, you know, an extension of you, your personality, so is the garden. And I am an avid gardener. I love to garden. Get a little obsessive about it sometimes, but that's something I do. I have like 50 fruit trees, and I love trying new. For me, it's been a lot of new citrus because I'm from Southern California. So, you know, that's what I do. And I work with it. I like difficult plants. Got a thing for plumeria right now. I love brugmansia, propagating them and getting different varieties and things. But it's always a challenge in my climate, you know, keeping things alive, because it's essentially a desert. So with this one, I had to change the material. I had to do a lot of experimentation. These are actually nylon, and they have been reused. They don't last as long, but I still have all of mine that I've done, they're all boxed and put away. Very difficult to do because the tree, we didn't have someone to go up in the tree. I put in my husband again there. It was quite high up there and we didn't have any lifts or anything. So we just took water bottles and tied the line to them and threw them over there and just worked with that and pulling them up. And it was a real learning experience. So every time I do this, it's knowledge. It's a learning experience. I learned that much more about the process, the possibilities. And so it's ongoing. I see this as a lifetime evolution of the work. It's not just one and done. And I like that idea. It gives me a constant connection to the work over time. So I've had 10 years over time of this. And then this is another example kind of going back in Oceanside Museum of Art where it's a discrete piece. It's actually 12 feet, but I don't have a scale shot. First time I've ever had somebody paint the background for me. So that was really kind of nice. They just surprised me. Hey, we gave you black walls. And it was like, wow, that's cool. It really glowed. And I don't think that's something that comes across, but the red will cause things around it to glow red. When I did the Nevada Museum of Art, when I spent 8 hours straight in that smaller gallery with all the red around me, and at some point my husband had to pull me out of there because he says, I think you're overwhelmed. It was like sensory overload. And I was like, not talking too well. So, you know, it gets to me, like all that color, it can get to you. I think colors can affect us. And I associate a lot of things in my life to colors that people liked, personal things people liked. And then I was invited to do a piece on the exterior of the Oceanside Museum of Art. These pieces are from the one in Massachusetts. They're reconfigured. So I'm going to show, this doesn't look that high, but it was. And I wish it had been bigger, but hey, you know. So kind of give you an idea, I'm 5 foot. There we go. This one, I've got some shots of how it was actually created. We started because I couldn't get up there. There was no scaffolding. And quite frankly, I prefer to stay off of high places. But the side of the building, we couldn't screw into that. So it had to be hung from the top and then tied down to the bottom. So I built it on the ground, which is the left photo. And then in the middle, what we did is almost like a marionette. We tied it to a pole, took it up to the top and then dropped it. And then I'd already tied monofilament around, or fishing line around the edges, and we tied it out and put it into place. It was a really unusual way to do it, but hey, it worked. And it was another way to learn. When it was all done, literally went up to the top, cut the lines and just let it drop. And so that was kind of, you know, it takes so long to put it up and usually takes like 5 minutes for these to come down. And then I take them back, I cut them apart, I evaluate them, fix anything needs to be fixed, take out the bad ones, and then put them in storage until the next time. I don't live with my art. I wouldn't want to do that. So I don't put them up for myself. I just don't. And then this is skipping forward, I picked out kind of the best of. This one was done for the San Diego Arts Institute, which is nice because I usually don't work in Southern California that often. It's kind of nice sometimes when I don't have to travel, you know, because I usually travel with my family, and it's getting kind of hairy with a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old to take plane flights. I can't do it now, but it was the last couple when I was able to fly previously were difficult flights. So this one was activating this space, a stairway again that took up this large space in the gallery that nobody had dealt with. And so my idea, they said, well, where do you want to work? I'm like, right on the stair would be great. It actually created an arch so you could go under it. So this one made use of this thing that had been this kind of cumbersome visual eyesore, a very dominant part of the room. Okay, and then this one, a number of times I've been asked to come into historic houses and historic places because the work speaks to this time period, this to what I call time signature, which is getting further and further away from us now. Fewer younger people would recognize these as doilies, which is, to me, unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is. Time moves on, and I wouldn't always recognize a lot of things that my parents would. So this one was done in an historic home. It was Highfield Hall and Gardens in Falmouth in Massachusetts. Second time I was in Massachusetts. And in fact, the doily on the left, that one is here at the Hunter. So you'll recognize that one. And this just kind of floated and went up the stairs. And the challenge here was all of this was a historic house and not destroying the woodwork. And I'm always really mindful of that. I grew up around antiques. I'm very careful with things. A lot of my furniture is older, or I grew up with furniture. Some of it was 1800s, which is unusual again in California, but you know, dining table was 1840. You know, you always had to be really careful, and it was caned furniture. Your butt always breaks right through it. So you have to be very gentle, and I'm very gentle and like to preserve things. There's always this sense of history, and I think that that's what drew me to like studying art history, that sense of just love of older things, of historical things. And then on the exterior there, I did a new series. I began a new series, this white, which I had only touched on a long time previously, briefly, which I call Queen Anne's lace. And this is ranging out over a large area. So the rocks in the background are covered. This tree, which was this fabulous tree, was also had a piece, and then here's the rocks again. And so it was just meandering and taking over, or, you know, spreading out throughout, as Queen Anne's lace will do. So that was, and it was a Queen Anne building. So it was all these, I like it when a lot of things come together and I can put them together, which also encapsulates my work as well. So it's almost like a 3D collaging in some ways. This is a good example where it's an industrial type space. This was underneath an apartment building, and it was going to be converted into a coffee shop. So that was kind of fun to do because it's not pristine and it was pretty dirty, and just all the piping, it just gives me tons of places to tie to. So this is just sort of a smaller section of that. And then back to more pristine. This one kind of fun to kind of bridge this little weird gap in the wall. But again, you know, so adapting to the space, whether it's expected to be more discreet or more of an installation. And these are things I talk about before I come and do a work, you know, what the expectation of what the space is going to be. And, you know, or I really enjoyed this one because it was such a strange place. It was a community center, and that's the hallway that led into the gym. And so we did this up on the ceiling, and unexpected. And I like that, unexpected. There are certain places where I think, oh, I'd love to do this or that, or these places. And eventually I'll probably be able to check them all off the list. And getting closer to a lot of the spaces I'd enjoy being in. That are kind of weird and funky. And I like weird and funky places and weird and funky spaces. I chose my house because it's kind of weird and funky too. So let me show this one. I was up in Lenox, Massachusetts, and this is Queen Anne's lace again, the second time that I did this. Some of these were the same. I think it's the same as the previous. Again, nylon. So you know, this was a walking path, and you wind your way through, and I think there were 13 of them. And it was sort of like, I was kind of thinking of like a Japanese Zen garden in a way, that you never see all of them from one place. It's always about vantage points and working your way through it. So this was a lot of fun. It was a neat place in the Berkshires, and it was Edith Wharton's home, which is Edith Wharton. So that was really, really neat too. I studied her. For some reason, we did a lot of reading of her work in high school, and we did a lot of real close studying of it. So it was fun to be in this place in her, where she lived, the house that she built, the grounds, and all of that. So another example, again, you can't see, I think I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them here. So, and then one of my favorite photos, my daughter running through there, you know, because they're always there with me. Usually, this is one of the first times they're not, but you know, always kind of there, my support. And unfortunately, my daughter thinks all art is yarn. So, well, I guess it's not so bad. She likes to string it up in her room, and she's making art like her mother does. So this is a little bit of where I work. Some people say, well, what's your studio? I have a studio. It's a mess. I don't really go in there. I don't work in there. I've got to be around watching my kids. So it doesn't make sense to be in this other building. It's on my property, but it's in another building. So this is my house, and it's a time capsule type of house. It's all 1950s. And it's all original in there. And I'm working on getting the furniture all, 50s, 60s, my pole lamps and some Danish modern and things that have been given to me, inherited, and that sort of thing. So it's like I live around these things that I've been around all my life. That table is something I grew up with, but I love the ceiling and in the house. It's unexpected, as ranch houses are. They seem very flat from the outside, and then you go in and it's a different space because it's a vaulted ceiling. So the rooms feel big, but it looks kind of dumpy from outside. And I enjoy that kind of surprise. That's part of my studio. It's just why I don't go in there. It's a mess. I'm going to convert it to bedrooms. It needs to have a better purpose than it is right now. It's just a hoarder's paradise. But in my house, I like unusual things. I'm in my tiki room here. So it's all my rattan and weird lamps. I have a lamp collection, and I sit and I watch TV, because what else do you do when you do handwork? Most people I know do handwork. They're either listening to radio, podcasts, or watching TV. And I enjoy, British crime dramas, so, and there I am with, surrounded by the kids' toys, which it's worse now because we had to set up a huge sort of playpen in the whole middle of the room. And it's just a disaster in there now. So I moved from the living room to there. I have a desk off to the side that looks out into my garden, and out the other side, I can look out into the rest of the garden and have some land around us. So it's nice. And just some of the funky stuff that sits by me, my crazy lamps. I love that. Absent Brothers lamps. They're from, I think, LA, from back 70s and 80s. And you could buy them. They're plaster. You could paint them. This one was pre-painted, but it's this kooky lamp that's all, like, what do you call that? Kids Stories. I'm having a moment here. Like the guy, the egg who gets broken. Geez. Okay, next slide. Humpty Dumpty, those things, nursery rhymes, and they're all illustrated, and they're really fun. And my studio companion there, my old 16-year-old Pomeranian, who looks much better in that photo than he presently does. And he's laying on a series I've been working on. They're laser etched images, and they're part of blankets. But yeah, that's my old dog. Just working here, kind of showing, if you're not familiar with crochet, it's done with a hook. Those of you who are really familiar with it notice that I have sort of the overhand technique. That's how I learned, and just working on that. And that's just what I do day after day after day. I enjoy it. It's soothing. It's comforting. People find handwork very comforting because of the repetition, and it sort of just calms you down. And it's something that I need. It's something I think a lot of us need. These days. So what I'm going to show is one of my most recent ones, this one, then I'll show kind of the process of getting to it. This was done for Mini Art Textile in Como, and I could not make the trip. I was not in the best of health at the time. So and by the way, it's in a disused church, a decommissioned church, which I've always wanted to have something in a church because it's such a solemn space. And this was like a Romanesque or perhaps Gothic. So really neat. I got the dimensions. I said, I will create it at home. I will lay it out to the dimensions. I'll sew it all together, and then it just goes up into the space. So this was the first time sort of like trying out this idea of I'm kind of doing it, but someone else is installing it completely, which is sort of the whole idea of crochet and doilies. Somebody writes a pattern and then somebody replicates it. So it makes sense. And it was moved to other locations and reconfigured. So this kind of shows on the left, I have my idea of what the sketch should look like. And you can see it changes, and that's okay. I'm not things change, things ebb, things flow. It's okay. And it's part of learning to let go. And that's good. It's part of the entire process. So on the bottom, I have an image of the space and then drew it in and then shipped this to them. And then they put it up as they saw fit. Okay. And then this is what it ended up looking like in the space. It was, you know, the red glows. It sometimes seems faded when you see it in bright light, and then it gets up, it's lit. It's very vibrant. It totally blows out digital cameras. It's very difficult to document, but visually it's very stunning. And I like that. I love saturated colors. For a period of my life, probably 5 years, I wore nothing but black. And when I finally started wearing color again, it was like bright color, you know, that's just love that saturation. Anything very saturated captures my attention. So this I'm showing the prep that I did to do the one that's up at Franconia, which will be up for another year and a half. As long as an ice storm doesn't take it down, but it should be up. That's an experiment to be up that long, and I will learn from it. So I've always liked the idea of this pattern, which is known as a pineapple in crochet. It's a repeating pattern, and it's always the same. I can do it over and over and over. So I was doing these little tiny ones, and I was really wanting to work with yellow. When I was younger, my house was yellow inside, a lot of yellow. The whole thing was yellow. It's all pink now, but it was yellow. Yellow was my grandmother's favorite color. She's passed on now from some 5 or 6 years, 5 years. And I've always wanted to work with that. And what I wanted to work with too is gradation. With red, you tend not to have the same kind of gradations as you do with other colors. With red, you want to go lighter, you end up in pink. Or it's the tone, you'll go into like an orangey red or more of like a burgundy. So with yellow, you really have the different. And I did a pink piece one time too, so kind of playing with different colors. So I have the smaller one. I was thinking about this. I'm still not totally sure what's happening with these. I think they're hanging like raindrops. They kind of hang like raindrops. But this kind of tied into what I thought I'd like to do. And I was working on a proposal for commission that didn't pan out, but it got me thinking about things like gradations of color, or using the pineapples, which are on the left there. And the end result was moving to doing each of those pineapples, but when they got installed and they're all zip tied together, I don't remember how many there are, but there's over 100 of these, and I still have enough for an entire second one. I always make too much, take it all, use what I need, take it home, put it away. So they got pulled, and when they got pulled, they became these like diamond shapes. And then this was the result. So, and there's my husband again, being my scale model. And so you can see about each one came to about a foot. And what's hard to photograph here is they actually do have a gradation between the yellow in the middle and up to the white at the top. It is actually a very faint yellow. So this was a lot of fun. And I got to be up on a boom crane, which was a new one for me. I usually don't like to get that high, but they're pretty stable and safe. So, but a lot of fun to do with this. And this one's the yellow wallpaper. It's named after a story, The Yellow Wallpaper, and it has to do, this was done in September in Minnesota. So we were very nervous about traveling, and we'd been in the house, California, you know, locked down in March. And it was getting to me being in the house that much. And the idea of the yellow wallpaper is the woman has a nervous breakdown, and she is given what's called the home cure. She's told to stay in her house, in this home, they go to their country home, and to stay there and do nothing at all, to just be in that space, so that her being a woman in this domestic space is supposed to cure her anxiety, her problems. Instead, she ends up losing her mind. She starts thinking that people are crawling around every night in there. And it's really, at the end, her husband is horrified that she's basically lost her touch with reality. So, and she talks about the yellow wallpaper. And a lot of people talk about yellow as being an anxious color. You could think of it as a happy color, but a lot of people say anxious. If you think about, you know, Van Gogh lived in the yellow house in Arles, and that's where he descended into madness. So it's kind of that connection. And I keep thinking, I hope that this will have a different meaning by the time it comes down, which was 2 years from then, so a year and a half now. So then this, I think, is the last. Oh no, we have, there I have a detail, just so you get an idea. You see the pineapple and then it distorts it. And then here we are this week at the Hunter, and getting back to working with keeping up appearances, and I'm showing me unboxing. So this is kind of the process. It's boxed up at my house. I keep it in storage. I take them out and air them now and then, because you have to take care of textiles. They get all funky smelling. You have to take them out and air them. However, in Southern California, I don't have to do it as much because we're always in this dry climate. But when I go to other climates, that's something that always hits me, the humidity. It causes smells to be more pungent. So, you know, I take them out, I spread them out, I run through them. I've picked, okay, I know that I need this kind of a height, and then I box them up and ship them. So here they are, you know, they met me there, and kind of taking them out. I got it all into 2 boxes, and I am sending back the bigger box. So I only used 1 box, but I'd rather have more than not enough. And then on the right there, just going through the process, laying them out, becoming acquainted with them again. Some patterns are tight, some patterns are open, some are big, some have a lot of repeats on the edges, and just sort of figuring out what I need to use. And there we are, doily shots. That's it. They don't have any structure outside what I do with them. They just flop and lay there. And what structure they have is me tying them and nailing them and screwing them into place. And then showing, I usually throw them on the floor because I want to see the pattern, and then I make piles. Sometimes I separate them by the size, because I need to know, do I need a medium, a big, a little, a gigantic, and just kind of work with it through that. So yeah, if you think of putting your face on them or anything, just remember they've been all over the floor and in my garage. So they're fairly, they shed because it's cotton, 100% cotton. And they do have the fibers coming off of them, and I can feel the dust. And when I'm working with newer, some of the cotton I was using, it would shed a lot and I would be breathing it. So I've moved to a nicer cotton that's no longer spun, but it's braided cotton, and it's helping a lot. And hopefully the quality will remain good longer, in the colors, because these are fading now 10 years on. And here we are, up, not me up the ladder, but thanking the guys for helping me out. These are all concrete walls, so everything had to be drilled with a big old drill. And if anybody knows who works on ladders and stuff, it's very dangerous in stairs to have ladders. So it's a lot of careful planning. And it went smoothly. Nobody fell off the ladder, and that's good. And I'm very pleased with how it turned out. And just me kind of tying in. When you go in the space and you look down, you're looking down, 3 floors from the top. It's I find it a big vertigo, you know, it kind of gives me vertigo looking down, and I don't care for heights. So by stringing these in between, kind of cutting off the floors, that helped a bit too. So that's me just doing what I do. I'm wearing my usual bun because my hair is, I've got, you know, hair that hasn't been cut in a long time, and helps keep my mask in place. Sort of goes with the doilies too. So this is the entrance in, and then up the stairs to a landing, and then another, and then up to the top. So a lot of fun, kind of an archway. I like doing archways because it takes the corners and it cuts the corners and changes the way that feels. And then this is going up the steps. What you can't tell is the ones up at the top are coming out kind of over you. They're put at about head height. So they're kind of up, and that helps to kind of close in the space. And the way it feels is very, to me, feels kind of how I feel in my mind these days. It's home all the time, dislocated, kind of what's going on. The world's kind of nutty right now. So hopefully, you know, maybe you get a little sense of that being in there. And there's the pinwheel that we've seen before. The one to the right is the one we saw in one of the Massachusetts shows. And then coming out to the gallery up top, little tiny arch there. If you turn around, it does kind of look like cobwebs, which is kind of fun too. And then that's looking down from the first landing. So as it brings you up, and that's, there it is.
Ashley, thank you so much. We had some great questions during your talk, as well as comments like beautiful, beautifully designed, stunning, which I can absolutely attest to, having seen your installation in person. But one of our guests has asked, you talked a little bit about pattern and repetition.
Mhm.
Do you work with asymmetrical patterns?
No, no, I usually don't. It's the nature of the doilies that it's just a constant repeat. Each row, I have to memorize kind of each row as I go. And then I sit there and sometimes I'm repeating, maybe 20 times and it's the same, the same, the same, the same, the same. And just something I really enjoy about that, the symmetry of it. But they do get kind of pulled out of that symmetry, and that's nice too.
Well, so that leads us to the next, I think, really great question. A visitor asked, how does gravity not take over and how do your doilies not snag?
Um, Sometimes I get caught on them. I was joking before because I usually have a bun and I have it in with clips, and I'll turn around and catch my own head or be stuck on, stuck in the doily. It's the gravity, they're tight. They are drum tight. And so a lot of people, when they're helping me to install, I never get to work with the same people usually over and over or anything. I don't have a crew or anything. So I always have to kind of work with people and say, okay, I'm kind of give you the rationale of how I do this. And, don't be gentle with these things. They yank on them, stretch them. That's actually what's done when you actually have a doily, like a little one. When you're done with it, the first thing you do is get it wet and then stretch it. You block it. It's called wet blocking. You block it and then you pin it. And what it does is it holds its shape. So you have to be kind of aggressive with it. Now, that's because it's cotton. It's not going to fray. If you're using something like wool, which I wouldn't use because the animals would just eat it to pieces. But if you are using wool, you don't want to abrade wool because abrading wool causes it to felt. But you don't have that problem with cotton.
Do your patterns have significant meaning, historical significance?
There are a lot of older ones. I have a lot of early 1900s patterns. I have a huge pattern collection. Some of those are my own patterns, but I'd have to think for a while which ones are my own because they blend in now. Some of them I wrote down and then I know, oh, that's mine. But some of them have kind of, I mentioned the pineapples that were up at Franconia. That's it's for the kind of this shape that's there. That's a pineapple. Some of the ones here at the Hunter look like wheat. And the pineapple, that one has a more direct significance because pineapples are a symbol of hospitality. And so that's why I did the pineapples in the yellow one, the idea of hospitality, but kind of not quite right. Welcoming, I guess.
So somebody wants to know what specific kind of thread you use and what kind of size.
I'm just using your standard, like an Aran weight cotton. It's like, I don't know, K-hook. I don't use a big hook at all. A lot of people are like, oh, I use a big hook. No, because when you make a big loop with smaller weight cotton, you're having a hard time. It slips off, it moves, it ties itself. So it becomes difficult to work with. It's easier just to find much larger patterns and just crochet loosely.
So how did you get into crochet? Like which one was first, crochet or art? And what would you say to new artists who want to explore crochet art?
Well, I crochet all the way back to probably 6 years old. I mean, it's way, way back. I don't remember when I didn't. And in the older days, when you had, like, let's say the Irish crochet and people were making a living from that, they would teach kids as young as 4 to do that. So far, I have had no success with a 5-year-old. So, but hopefully maybe this year we'll have get her to calm down, sit and do it. And what was the second part of that?
What would you say to new artists who want to explore crochet art?
Just do it. Just do it. Take the leap, because the worst thing is the first time you do something. That's the scary part. And then being concerned with what people think. I did it. It's weird. I did it on the sly for a long time, because I was concerned that people would tell me it wasn't art. And this is like, about 2002, when now fibers, yeah, totally okay. But back then, no, no, that was still really not as mainstream. So there's a lot of support for it now, which is great. And there's a lot of discussions about craft and fiber and fine art, and not making that huge distinction anymore. And that's wonderful. But then it leads us into what I assume will be other areas and new conflict. But yeah, just do it. Don't be afraid of what people say. You do it. If either they're not going to like it or they're not going to like it. And that's just how it goes.
What colors do you hope to explore in the future?
I am working on a green series. I call it my arsenic green. It's all about how arsenic green was a Victorian color, a very specific color, but it was made with arsenic. And people painted it on the walls. It was used to dye clothing, and people were killing themselves with this color. It was the expensive, beautiful color that was slowly killing people, sending people mad too. So that's, again, the idea of this domestic, but not quite right domestic, something kind of below the surface that's destructive in a way. So I've been working with this specific green. I want to explore the yellow more. It took me a long time to get to yellow. The black, I want to do the black. I've got to do, there are companies that will take old clothing that's kind of worn out, like faded, they'll dye it black for you. And I like that, to reuse it, because we have clothing, it's so disposable now. And what do you do with it when it's done? We're like in our house now, okay, your shirt's starting to wear out, rag pile, and use it and use it and use it, and try to get more out of things, especially since March, that's taken on a whole new meaning for me. So to keep using stuff over and over, but black, I want to do black. I want to call it fade to black. Definitely want to do that, because I did a lot of black a long time ago, but not in large scale. And I think I think it would tie in very nicely to where things are right now.
Well, I think we are very excited about your use of red, especially it kind of matching our hunter red. And Ashley, I want to thank you so much for telling us about your process, for talking about your new installation, Bridging the Hunter. We appreciate you so much traveling this week, coming to be here to create this stunning work, and for joining us this evening. It has been fascinating and wonderful and truly incredible to see it all come together.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I hope everybody comes and sees it and enjoys it and walks through it and gets that, the same kind of feeling that I did when I walked through it at the end.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you to everyone who tuned in this evening for the Hunters virtual Artwise with Ashley Blalock. Ashley V. Blalock, Bridging the Hunter, will be on view through January 2022. Again, repeating what Ashley just said, we do hope that you come and see this remarkable installation in person. We hope you enjoyed this evening, and we hope you'll join us for our upcoming programs, including an exhibition sneak peek and lecture with curator Dr. Jonathan Stolman from the Mint Museum. To find more information about this and all events, please visit our events page on the Hunter Museum's website and consider signing up for email reminders. Thank you again to our speaker, Ashley, for this remarkable Artwise. And thank you all for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful evening and come see us at the Hunter. Thank you.